So everyone's always asking me, what's it like to live in South Africa? This is it. Did you know that the E in South Africa stands for electricity? Just by the way, there's no E in South Africa, hence no electricity. What's up guys, it's Bryce here. How are you guys doing? Today I'm going to be talking to you about keeping reptiles alive without any electricity, because that's a big problem here in South Africa. We go through this thing called load shedding, which is shedding the load of how much electricity we use. Nobody really knows what load shedding is because there's stories behind it, conspiracies, and I like conspiracy theories, but hey, let's not get into that. That's not what this video is for. So having no electricity is definitely not something you want, especially if you're keeping reptiles in a beautiful room like this, because they require heat. Yes, Africa is hot, but it also gets cold here in South Africa, and reptiles cannot handle that, especially when they don't have a large enough space to like find burrows and stuff, which they'll do in the wild, enabling them to properly thermoregulate, because they are ectotherms, which means they cannot produce their own body temperature. So we rely on heat or electricity as reptile keepers to keep these amazing animals alive. So it's pretty important to have electricity. So currently, as I'm busy talking to you, we have no electricity. But why are the lights on and why are my cages still running? Well, let's get into that now. So first of all, we have invested in a generator. So I basically switch off our mains for the house and then plug the generator straight into the wall and switch it on. Therefore the power runs right through our circuit, not leaking out into the external circuit board of Eskom, which supposedly supply electricity, but we don't really have much electricity, so whatever. So generators, that's one of the biggest things that has helped me keep my animals and my incubators going. Obviously you'll see lights flashing now because the generator doesn't put as much constant power out as normal electricity does, so the LEDs are kind of flickering. The only thing about the generator system I am using is it sucks, especially when power goes out. Like 2 days ago, it went out at 12 o'clock at night. I was asleep, and then it was only scheduled to come back on at like 4:30 in the morning, and we're currently, well, back then, today's already hot, we were going through a bit of a cold front, and it was rainy, wet weather, nice and humid at least, but very, very cold, going down to about 13 degrees Celsius, which is not ideal for reptiles at all, especially ones in the incubators, supposed to be staying around 30 degrees Celsius to incubate. So those will all be charted up in Fahrenheit as well for you guys that are in America, because you use Fahrenheit. I don't understand it. Why? Celsius just works. So therefore, when the power does go out at early morning stages like that, I actually woke up. Luckily, the power wasn't even supposed to be scheduled to go off then. We had no idea the power was going off, and it went off. I luckily woke up at 2 a.m. in the morning, and then I went through and switched on the generator to keep the eggs in that running and all the animals' heat working properly, especially in the cold weather. Luckily for that 2 hours, the temperatures didn't drop too much, because my room is so nicely insulated with the ceiling and the floor being insulated. It just keeps that heat so much better than a normal room would. So that's some of the sacrifices with keeping reptiles in that I've had to do, because you have to run out in storms, go check if anything's leaking, go run out in the storm in the night to switch on the generator and get everything sorted so the animals will survive the night, and then stay up not getting any sleep because you care for your animals. But I'd totally do it 100 times over. Eventually I would like it to invest in different systems and that would work properly without me having to like manually go and switch the generator on in case I'm out of town or not here, something like that, and the power randomly goes off without us knowing, which does tend to happen pretty often, like it had or has today. Because today I was supposed to edit a whole lot of stuff in that, but I can't because I can't run my computer off the generator because the power dips in that and it's going to destroy my PC. Another thing that you can do that a few of my friends have done here in South Africa is using a UPS power supply. UPS stands for uninterrupted power supply. Basically, it's connected straight to the power, and as the power goes off or the power dips, it's got charged batteries and it runs everything off the batteries that have been charged. The only thing with that is it's not super expensive. For me, it's pretty expensive right now, especially because it won't be able to run the Reptile Room that I'm currently using for very long. I'd probably have to invest in quite a few thousands of rands worth of UPS systems to keep this Reptile Room going for at least 4 hours. So a normal system that is like the higher end would probably only last my Reptile Room for about an hour, which I would actually still want to invest in too, because then if I'm not home and the power goes off and I can't switch on the generator straight away, it just gives that extra hour of electricity that I wouldn't have had before. So that's another thing you can think of to invest, especially for incubators. If you have incubators that need to stay at a constant temperature and they don't draw as much power as a whole Reptile Room would, so connecting your UPS power supply to that would be just amazing. I don't have one of those yet, but a few friends do, and they say it works like a bomb. For them, the UPS power supply works for about 8 hours, depending on the sizes of your UPS, obviously, for one incubator, which is pretty dang good. Another thing I've done in the past, especially when it's cold, is boiling water bottles, like hot water bottles or just normal plastic water bottles, and getting warm water in the plastic water bottles, not boiling hot, and then boiling hot water bottles in those little hot water bottles and putting it in the cages wrapped in a towel to keep the animals nice and warm. Obviously, if you don't have anything like a gas stove or anything like that to boil the water, you won't be able to boil water because there's no electricity. Otherwise, you can make a fire, but that takes a really long time to boil water. Trust me, I have tried. Luckily, it is summer currently, and it started to warm up. Like today is the first day of decent weather that we've had in the past 2 weeks. That's been totally freezing, and the time where we've had no electricity. Like, what the heck? Some things I try to do when the power goes out is I do not come into my Reptile Room at all, even though I really want to check on the animals, check on the temperatures, how they're doing. But I don't do that because I know as soon as I open the door of the Reptile Room, heat is going to leak out instantly and it won't come back because there's nothing to power the heat. So I do not come into this room when the power is out if there's no generator on. And I do not open cages, especially when it's cold and that. Rather don't risk checking the temperatures and that. Just keep the cages closed and keep it as warm as possible. What I also have done in the past is wrapping blankets in front of the glass of the cage, because that's where you lose a lot of your heat. So just put a blanket down there to just give it a bit of insulation to keep that heat from leaking out and slow it down, I suppose, just in case you're out of power for a really long time and you cannot get it back on. So it's definitely something to always keep in mind when keeping reptiles. It can happen to anyone, especially here in South Africa. It's something that's really common, so I guess we're a bit more used to it, but that doesn't mean we're more prepared for it, I should say. So there's a lot of things to invest in, like solar panels, solar systems, wind turbines, a whole lot of different things. I would eventually love to invest in a solar system so it's totally off the grid, especially my Reptile Room, so I don't have to worry or stress at all. The only thing with that is it's super expensive with the batteries and inverters to set up something that can last a Reptile Room for quite a while, especially on those days that you don't have much sun, because solar is charged by the sun. So if you don't have sun, you don't have power, so you need a lot of batteries to be charged to survive you through those days that there is no sun. I just want to give out a huge shout out to my Patreon members, because they have really helped me in this time with no electricity, because buying fuel for the generator and constantly running it is also very expensive. It's a lot more expensive than just normal electricity, and that chows through your money like you cannot believe. Power is actually pretty expensive to run on a generator. So thank you guys so much for supporting me. If the rest of you want to support me, Patreon link is down below. There's some awesome perks. I'll give you some cool stuff, give you behind the scenes access and everything. It's really cool. I enjoy it. Cannot wait to grow the Patreon with you guys so I can start doing stuff like behind the scenes live streams and that on the Patreon account. So if you want to go support, you help us keep the lights on. Thank you very much. I really do. So something I just want to say is a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters, because they have helped me through this time. Because electricity is expensive, especially while running it on a generator that costs gas or petrol, as we say in South Africa. It goes through a lot of that, and that is expensive stuff. It's also, I think, more expensive in South Africa than it is anywhere else in most of the world. That I'm probably wrong, but it's just expensive, guys. So if you want to help support this channel and support me keeping my reptiles going and everything running and see more videos, then please support me on Patreon down below, because I want to keep these lights on and keep making videos for you guys, but I haven't been able to for the past 3 weeks because, it's been like forever now, because we were like 3 weeks without Wi-Fi, now no electricity, and it's just bills and bills of paying those things that I need to pay. So I really do appreciate the support, guys. Thank you so much. As you can see, Reptile Room is coming along. I've painted these things white because I found some found some old paint in the garage that I could use. So that's super dope. I'm excited. It's not finished yet. I'm going to clean up these edges, so don't stress about that. Yeah, I didn't realize how expensive running Reptile Room would be. Pretty intense, so think of that also before you go ahead and spend everything on getting reptiles, because you want to be prepared for if the power does go out and you need to invest in something like a generator, UPS power supply, or solar. So I'm going to eventually do solar, but I will do that once I've raised the funds for it, and that will be super dope. An off-the-grid reptile room relying on no one but the sun, I guess. The sun's heat. So this video may take a few weeks to get out, just because I cannot upload stuff while the generator is running and I cannot edit it. So I have to run it when there's normal power, because I don't have UPS power supply for my computer either. So that's it. This may take a while, but hope you enjoyed it. Maybe the last video of the year. Hopefully not. But it all depends on electricity. Thanks guys for watching. Bryce from Righteous Reptiles. Remember to go out, learn, explore, inspire. Live it!